Oh, uh, morning, everyone. The reason why I'm laughing before I start talking is John's in the office today, and you won't be able to see him because he's off camera. But he's saying stuff in the background to try to make me laugh. And the comment that he made just before I pressed live can't be repeated, but it made me laugh. Glossophobia. Have you ever heard of that? Because I haven't. And the reason... Oh, I need some tea. The reason why I wanted to talk about this was because, well, for a couple of things, really. Right, calm down. Be quiet, John. I sent John a... do you remember this week when Boris had an absolute shocker? I think it was at the CBI when he did his talk to business leaders, the Prime Minister, business leaders. And the Peppa Pig thing is... that's not really the relevant point. It's when he has an absolute shocker and misses his place. But I've got the audio, so I'll just connect my phone and I'll play it and we'll cringe together and then we'll talk about it. Right, here we go.
So with safer streets, with great local schools, with fantastic broadband...
Oh, no, I apologise. I did that wrong. What I need to do is to make sure that you guys can hear it. Let me do this. Right, let's try that again. Turn that up. Turn that up. Right, one more time.
So with safer streets, with great local schools, with fantastic broadband... forgive me. Forgive me. Forgive me. People will have the confidence...
Oh, let's end that there. I mean, I cringed for him. Take the politics out of it, but it was painful. There's nothing worse than dying on your feet. But I did some research on this because apparently glossophobia, I didn't even know it was called that. I mean, it's a phobia for everything, I guess. Is a fear of public speaking. It's a very common phobia, and one that is believed to affect up to 75% of the population. 75%? Some individuals may feel a slight nervousness at the very thought of public speaking, while others experience full-on panic and fear. They may try to avoid public speaking situations at all costs, or if they must speak in public, they endure shaking hands and weak, quivering voice. I mean, there's nothing worse, is there, than when I've had a couple of examples where I've been asked to speak last minute, and if it's someone else's slide deck or a pack that you're quickly thumbing through, and you don't really know the subject too well, and you're asked to talk, there's nothing worse than when you have a bit of a Boris moment like that and you lose your place, or as soon as you start talking, your voice goes all quivery, you get nervous, and then it sort of snowballs from there. But it goes on to say that, I mean, I don't necessarily agree with this, but it says that most people who have glossophobia are known to have a social anxiety disorder. But, I mean, it's never comfortable, is it really, to get up and stand in front of people and talk? because it just feels quite unnatural if you're not doing it. And especially if you think about now when everything's social media, everything's quite distant. You've got Teams, you've got things like that. Talking on Teams, or even as I'm doing now, live broadcasting, that's not the same. Because yes, I am live and I could say anything, and definitely John could say anything in the background. But I'm still safe. I've got my cup of tea here. I've got a hoodie on. You know, I'm not stood up. I'm sat down. I'm just comfortable. I'm in my own little world, which means that it's not hard to do this. But imagine you're on a stage and you've got maybe a couple of hundred, maybe a couple of thousand people looking at you, and then you've got to talk. I mean, I always used to find that when I'd ever do those sorts of things, that being scripted is worse. But I get why you have to be scripted, because if you're not scripted, then you can go off on a tangent and just start, waffling, and then before you know it, you've massively run over time. So there's a couple of things that I also did some research on about how you can overcome your glossophobia. I mean, it's a bit of an obvious one, is this one, but it's know your topic. The better you understand what you're talking about, and the more you care about the topic, that's the key part, the less likely you'll make a mistake or get off track. I guess a good example of that would be Jordan Peterson. So I've seen on Twitter last night that he was at Oxford University doing a talk, and I think he did one at Cambridge as well. Now, his views, rightly or wrongly, can be seen as controversial, but because he knows his topic inside and out and he is an expert in that area, you just watch how he holds himself in what is a very stressful situation. Now, it's not like you going on stage and talking about a product launch or an initiative you've got going away at work, or something that everybody is quite warm to, be that climate change. Stating the obvious, we're in a climate emergency and all that lot. No, not many people are going to go, oh, I don't think that's true. But if you're Jordan Peterson and you're going on talking about diversity in the workplace, the data behind what's going on with the gender pay gap, very controversial topics, but he holds himself so strongly, and people that try to attack him, he can stand on his own 2 feet and more than likely win the debate, because he knows his topic inside and out. The next one is get organized. So ahead of time, let's see what it says. Ahead of time, carefully plan out the information you want to present, including any props, audio, or visual aids. The more organized you are, the less nervous you'll be. Use an outline on a small card to stay on track. If possible, visit the place where you'll be speaking and review available equipment before your presentation. That last line there, equipment before your presentation. I've seen so many people, not to their fault, but have technical issues on the stage. And if it's a talk where you don't have a lectern to hide behind, it feels very different if you're stood at a bit like a dispatch box. If you've got that around you, it's almost like a barrier between you and the audience. So if something does go wrong, you feel, rightly or wrongly, like psychologically, you've got a shield. But if you're just stood on the stage and you've got a mic and you have a technical issue, your mic fails or the slides fail or the lighting changes or whatever it might be, that's just you. Now, if let's say you're quite a charismatic person and that fault is lasting about 10 or 15 minutes, you might be able to, make light of the situation, just sort of like tell a few jokes, just things like that. But if you're in an auditorium and there's a couple of thousand of people, you're not going to be able to entertain the people that are right at the back because you haven't got your mic on or anything like that. So you just got to stand there. And if you're quite a nervous person in terms of public speaking anyway, then you could just imagine how that anxiety would go up. And then when it says get organized around slides, presentation, I had a situation where I was at a management conference, I think it was, at Silverstone, and I was presenting some slides, and it was part of a wider slide deck, So do you know when you if it's like a function initiative or a divisional initiative, and you've got various different departments within that division. You might have operations, you might have finance, you might have IT, or whatever it could be. And then each individual from those sections say, oh, can you submit 4 or 5 slides that you want to talk about on the day? And then they'll put them into a master deck, which then avoids changing slides over and changing laptops and things like that, which I get. And I remember I did my slides, showed them to my boss beforehand, all agreed, all got sent over as I wrote them, and then got to the point where I was going to talk and got on stage. The first slide was as I expected it was an introduction slide, but then they decided, the people that put the pack together, to change the order of the slides. And I'd already practiced what order that was going to go in, because they were going to flow into each. Oh, and I had an absolute shocker. I was mumbling my words. I was making sort of like awkward comments about how the slides were different. It was a bit like Boris going, forgive me. And I remember after it, I got the telling off from my boss for not checking them beforehand. But I remember saying to him, but I did send them over how I wanted to, and they changed it. And he said, well, you should have checked it before. Rightly or wrongly, I think he's probably right there. I probably should have gone over to them in the morning and just say, can I just have a look at where I am in there and just see the slides? And then I'd avoid that. So yeah, get organised. If you are sending slide decks over to other people to pull together, just make sure before your slot or you're due to talk that it is in the format that you send it over. Practice and then practice and then practice some more. Practice your complete presentation several times. Do it for some people you're comfortable with and ask for feedback. It may also be helpful to practice with a few people with whom you're less familiar. Consider making a video of your presentation so you can watch it and see opportunities for improvement. It's a bit like this now. So where I'm talking now, I could, it's live, but it will save the broadcast, and then I can go back afterwards and say, well, what worked and what didn't work. But practicing, is definitely important. We spoke about this before, where it says practice with a few people with whom you're comfortable with. That's that intelligent, ignorant people. So you might be an expert in your area, but if you've got people around you who are switched on, have got a brain, but they're ignorant in terms of your expertise in your subject, if you present to them, they probably don't understand what you're saying, but they'll be able to give you some points on, well, I don't think it flowed quite well there. You seem to sort of stumble over your words at that point, or you didn't hold yourself up when you were sort of making that killer point. You didn't do any pauses, which is always key. You just sort of like talked at me for 35 minutes. Challenge specific worries. So when you're afraid of something, you may overestimate the likelihood of how bad things are happening. List your specific worries. Then directly challenge them by identifying probable and alternative. I mean, Jesus, like that could be a long list, couldn't it? I mean, all the things that could go wrong. I mean, yeah, but I would say you're looking at the big things there. Technical issues, sound check. Like I said before, in terms of the slide, maybe you've got quite a controversial topic, or you've got some points you want to get across that are going to cause some people to raise a few eyebrows. So you have to be prepared for that. How are they going to react to that? Are they going to ask some difficult questions? Are you prepared for what potential questions that might come your way? Visualize your success. So imagine that your presentation will go well. Positive thoughts can help decrease some of your negativity about your social performance and relieve some anxiety. I was sort of like that visualize your success stuff. I was like, I don't know about that. But a couple of weeks ago, I had a meeting, and in the car park afterwards, the chap that we were meeting with, he said, do you want to do an experiment around the power of the brain? And when you're in a car park in Milton Keynes and he's saying, do you want to do an experiment with the part of the brain? I don't know what I was going to do. So the experiment was, hold your right arm out. So hold your right arm out as I am now. And say out loud, I am strong and I am powerful. I am over and over, not shouting it, but just I am strong, I am powerful, I am strong, I am powerful. And he said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my hand on your arm and I'm going to pull it down, or try to pull it down, so it's sort of like you like stood to attention, so that your arm's by your hip. And he went to go pull it down, and he couldn't. Now, obviously, he couldn't if he put his full weight on it. But in terms of his arm trying to pull my arm down, he couldn't. So he said, right, we're going to do that same experiment again, but I just want you to say over and over, I am weak, I am feeble, I am weak, I am feeble. And with his finger, he put his finger on my arm, and he just moved that right to the side of my body. And that was witchcraft for me. So the visualizing success, I can get on board with that. Do some deep breathing. This can be very calming. Take 2 or more deep breaths, slow breaths, before you get up to the podium and during your speech. Yeah, I'd also say drink some water before you go up there, and ideally have a little bit of water if you can, because if you're constantly talking, air conditioning's on. Bizarrely, when you're on stage, even though you've got a microphone on, your octaves go up a few levels, and you can get a very dry mouth. And you don't want to hear that noise in between your words, because it can get quite obvious. Focus on your material, not the audience. Now, I've fallen foul of this many times, where you scan the audience for people, and it's a good trick actually, because you scan the audience and you find someone who looks to be sympathetic to your cause or your talk, and you almost talk to them. But you don't talk to them for the whole entire speech, because that'd be weird. You need to move every so often, depending on how long you're speaking. So if you're speaking for an hour, maybe every sort of like 10 minutes or so, you move to somebody else. But don't try to talk to everybody in the crowd, because you're like RoboCop. Oh. Don't do that. And then also don't just like stare off into the distance, because you look like an absolute nutcase. But yeah, just focus. I'd say focus on your material, is important, not the audience, but find those handful of people in the audience who look to be sympathetic. It might even be someone in the audience who you know or you're familiar with. Talk to them, but make sure you move, because it's not a presentation for one. I like this one. Don't fear a moment of silence. If you lose track of what you're saying or start to feel nervous and your mind goes blank, it may seem like you have been silent for an eternity. In reality, it's probably only a few seconds. Even if it's longer, it's likely your audience won't mind a pause to consider what you've been saying. I like a pause, especially when you're making a point. So you chat, and you could say glossophobia affects 75% of people, but it is all in your mind. And now research, and you can see that a pause, it's almost like a full stop or a paragraph break. But if you continue to talk, it's just noise. So yes, if you lose your spot, don't go, oh, forgive me, I'm sorry. Just stay silent. And because the audience won't necessarily know what's going on, they'll think they've missed a key point. But if you're saying, forgive me, they'll instantly go, something's gone wrong here. Oh, I'm going to dial into this now, because I want to see if we've got a bit of a Boris moment going on. Just don't say anything. Just pause. But also don't forget to put pauses in when you're making your point. And the last one is recognize your success. So after your speech or your presentation, give yourself a pat on the back. It may not have been perfect, but chances are you're far more critical of yourself than your audience is. See if any of your specific worries actually occurred. Probably not, unless unfortunately you had technical issues, which you can't. It's difficult to do anything about that once it's happened. Everyone makes mistakes. Look at any mistakes you made. Now, what I would also suggest is, if it's filmed, watch it back. But you are your own worst critic, so you're going to watch it back. I remember I watched one back of a talk I did before COVID, and from a side angle, when I turned to the side on the stage, I looked like Jeremy Clarkson. So I looked like I was 3 or 4 months pregnant. Now, other people said, no, I can't see that, whereas I clearly could. But that's just me being my own worst critic. But the talk went well, but I focused more on my appearance than what I was actually saying. But it's important to remember that it's not as scary as you think it is, because more often than not is most people will be looking at you and how you're talking and going, I wish I could do that. How's he doing that? And I remember I got told a long time ago, I believe it's the first 30 seconds of your talk ultimately sets you up in terms of your nerves and voice. So what you want to do there is you don't want to start your talk, and this is any words that you say out actually over the microphone. So not before you get on stage. Your mic's on, the cameras are on, the lights are on, the slide deck's up, 3, 2, 1, go. Imagine that you've got a 30-second window there, and anything you say within that 30-second window is ultimately what's going to set you up in terms of your nerves and your anxiety for the next half an hour, however long the talk is. So you want to make those 30 seconds as easy as possible for yourself, even if it is just to reconfirm where you are. It's nice to see everyone. I really appreciate this. I'm from Leeds. The journey from Leeds to London was a nightmare. Did anybody see what was going on the M1, the M25? Make it light, but make it easy for you to, because once you start to do that and you see people sort of nodding and laughing and sort of getting comfortable with you, then that instantly settles you. And then you go, right, let's get on with this then. Boom, and off you go. You're into it. But you've already settled your nerves. Whereas if you're on stage and you sort of sat in, it's not The Voice, you're not Adele, you're not stood there in the dark and then boom, a single spotlight goes on you and you go, that's not what we're going for here, because we're not professional performers per se. You're a business person and you need to do a conversation or a talk externally to other people that don't necessarily know you. Give yourself the best chance of success, and that is those first sort of 20 to 30 seconds. Make it easy. Make it easy. Huh? Is that Adele song? No, he's not listening. Make it easy on yourself, and then once you settle your nerves and your voice isn't up and down pitchy, off you go. So that's it. I'm going to end it now. I'm not going to rant on for as long as I normally do. Glossophobia, it's a thing. I didn't know it. Wanted to learn a bit about it after Boris's fluff. Found Boris's speech, did some research, found glossophobia. I hope it helped. Have a great Friday.